Today, we have Brendale in the studio to talk about her experiences foster parenting. Join us today on Fostering the Future.
Welcome to the Fostering the Future podcast, a show about all things child welfare, dependency, adoption, and foster care. Here are your hosts, veterans in the world of child welfare, Jack and Kat.
We believe that every human has incredible and equal value regardless of what side of the courtroom we sit on. We hope that everyone feels welcome and accepted here on Fostering the Future.
Make sure you follow us on Facebook or Instagram as Fostering the Future Podcast, or check us out on our website at fosteringthefuturepodcast.org. This is Jack, and I'm here with Kat, and today we have foster mom Brendale joining us, and we're so excited to have you in the studio. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So Brendale, let me ask you a very serious question. What is your favorite drink at Starbucks?
I think it changes, but today I would have to say my favorite Starbucks drink is a green tea matcha latte.
We're fans of the matcha latte. We've got a pup named Matcha, so I'm down with that. So this week we had a DM sent to us on Instagram from someone who's about to be licensed to be a foster parent. Mm-hmm. And she said, I have a profile of 0 to 18. You know, I've got a crib, I've got a bed, but I feel like I don't know how to prepare my house. Do you have any tips for her?
When you're first licensed, preparing your house can be quite an overwhelming task. Be prepared, but don't really overthink things. Ours was 0 to 4 when we first started out. And I imagined having something, male and female, clothing for each age group, each size. Like I was going to have a whole room of organized bins, and I overthought it because I did buy a bunch of stuff that wasn't needed, and it went to waste, or I donated it to a foster closet. So I would say, don't really overthink things. Have like your normal licensing stuff that you need for licensing, all your plug covers and safety stuff, and maybe your crib if you're definitely taking infants, car seats, but things like clothing, diapers, things that you need significant, like specific sizes. I would say definitely wait till you know what your placement is going to be.
Yeah, because like you could have the same placement for years and then you're only using like maybe 2 of those bins of clothes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then you're also dealing with preference and...
Yes. And there's some things that I tried to cut cost on and ended up spending more money because I'd have to buy something else because the first thing I bought wasn't meeting our needs. For instance, like a swing. I had 3 different swings. In the end, a Mamaroo is like the best. So I don't even know why I messed around with the other 3. I should have just went for the best from the get-go.
Yeah, I think I had heard about the Mamaroo before, but like it was, if I had looked at it and saw it in the price, I'd been like, oh no, not doing that. Like I can't do that. Like that's a lot of money to spend on something that's used for such a short amount of time. And then I remember I don't remember which baby it was, but it was sometime in the past couple years where I had a baby who just cried all the time. The baby had drug exposure that was significant and would scream and wouldn't sleep. And it was like you would meet all the needs, you would hold them, but like it was just, there was a discomfort that nothing I could do could solve, which of course makes you feel inadequate, and then you're tired because you haven't slept. I had mentioned to Danielle, who runs the local foster closet, we were talking about something and I'm like, man, I haven't slept. I'm exhausted. I feel like a zombie. I can't even like put sentences together right now because this baby just screams all the time. And she's like, oh, well, you don't have her in the Mamaroo? And I'm like, the what? And she said, come on over. I've got something for you. And I think she had a couple of Mamaroos in the closet that were available to foster parents to borrow. And I brought this thing home and I put this child in it, and it was just like the first silence in ages.
Yeah.
So I have heard people who've had babies that didn't like it, but from my experience, most of the babies that have had drug exposure, you put them in a Mamaroo and it's magic. I was like crying. I was so happy. I was texting her and I'm like, I don't know what kind of dark magic you're dealing here, but if I can sleep at night, I am down for it, man. And, you know, she was laughing at me. And then, you know, I got another baby recently. She's like, you gonna come pick up the Mamaroo? There was drug exposure. Right? Like, I'm like, yeah, I'll come get it. And it's a wonderful thing. And, you know, I have had lots of other swings and I wish that I had just cut right to the punch. And like, I think there's a lot of things as foster parents that you don't buy initially, maybe because of the cost, or you think it's not needed. And then when you have it, you're like, well, geez, I should have done this ages ago. I think, you know, something else that I feel that way about, and we've had this conversation that you have also felt this way. Being a foster parent for about a month or two, I realized that my little Ford Escape was not cutting it.
Yes.
And that I needed a bigger vehicle. So, you know, we had my adopted son. We had a sibling group of 2, and they were putting infant placements with us. I was like, well, gosh, we almost have no room in the car.
Right.
We need to figure something out, especially because car seats make seats look smaller, right? Mm-hmm. So the kids that were not in a car seat were complaining like, I'm like right up on a car seat. It's not comfortable. So we went down to, you know, some car dealerships and we bought a minivan. And I remember buying the minivan. Other foster parents were saying to me, just go with the bus.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I am never going to be that mom driving that bus.
When you say bus, you mean?
Well, like a Ford Transit or a Nissan Envy.
Because people like me who are not foster parents don't know or didn't know what a bus meant until you explained to me that you meant a Nissan Envy or
Ford Transit. Isn't there like a Chevy Express? But I don't think
there's a Chevy Express. We used to have one of those before. It was like 12 passenger, but you know, we graduated up to the Ford Transit 15 passenger.
Which is really nice. I saw it out there.
I really love the Nissan Envy, but they only make them to 12 passengers. Well, I guess they're not even making them anymore, right?
Yeah, they're not. So we're all going to be in Ford Transits one day, but yeah, so we got that minivan and, you know, it was new. So obviously you're going to lose money pretty quick on that. And very quickly we started to realize later that year that that was a huge mistake. And we should have it wasn't even that much more money to go for especially if we'd gotten used, we might have even saved some money. So even if you don't think you're going to need the larger vehicle, the 12, the 15 passenger, that was probably my biggest regret in foster care purchases was getting a minivan instead of a real van. So
that's when we realized our family motto was go big or go home, because we got a lot of kids. We have a big van, so there you go.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of vehicles, I would say, you know, car seats is another thing that we've talked about. I think when I first started looking at car seats, I was looking at, you know, what's got cool features, what looks cool, good prices. And
well, the ones that are like stackable that you could keep in your garage. And
I never would have thought about that.
Yeah. When you have a lot of them, you have to think about those things.
About stackable car seats. That's good to know.
Well, we typically look at it and go, oh, that has like a high safety rating and all of that. These are like the cheap Costco ones from Walmart, and
those
they just
are the ones
stack up neatly. They're more narrow than other car seats, so they fit neatly in the back of our, we used to have a Toyota Sienna, so they fit neatly there.
Well, and that's what I always look at now for car seats is what is the narrowest car seat that's going to impede on the other kids the least, and you can fit the most in a row. So the Costco car seat from Walmart, it's a good price. What is it, like $50-$60 sometimes?
Yeah, it's pretty affordable.
It's like easy to clean. Apparently they're stackable, which now I know.
That's good to know. And I think Corinne pointed out earlier that they all have to meet the same safety ratings. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like a marketing. I actually learned this a few years ago too, because I tend to get caught up with like all the features of everything. I remember one day I got like caught up in like toddler shoes for like 2 hours because I was like, and I'm sure this is not a surprise to you, Jack. I learned a few years ago that all car seats have to meet the same safety ratings, and the consumers are not exactly privy to what exactly those are. They're privy to like consumer reports,
right? What
we are reporting, but they're not privy to like the other information. And so we don't know that the Costco car seats are any better than like Brendale or or that they're worse, but they do have to meet the same safety ratings.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, these car seats expire, so you don't want to put a ton of money into something if you're expecting to foster for a significant amount of time that you're going to have to keep replacing.
And kids poop in them, and they throw up in them. And
Yep. And we've also sent car seats with kids when they reunified. I didn't want that to be a barrier for parents.
yeah.
So, and if you have like a $50 Costco car seat, it's much easier to let go of that and get yourself a new one.
And a lot of car seats are like $250.
Yes.
A lot of car seats.
Yeah, most of them are over $100. Every car seat I bought was probably over $100.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And why? Like, if they're meeting the same safety, like, I don't need fancy cup holders. Like, I have cup holders in my car, and honestly, I don't want my little ones drinking in the car most of the time anyways.
No, my kids one time like made a garden in their cup holder.
I do have big ticket items though that I'm fairly cheap. And I would say for some things, definitely spend the money. Strollers, I can't tell you how many strollers we bought. They were
I like the baby jogger.
It's a jogger type stroller. It pushes really great. We had, the Graco and all of the different kinds, the sit and stand ones. Those were terrible. They were a nightmare to
You're
push.
like giving me trauma just talking about those because I had all this too and I ended up selling them.
They
but
were
I
awful.
love my baby jogger. Like, that's the one thing I can speak to. It's like the baby jogger brand, but it wasn't like a jogging stroller.
Oh, it's called the City. We have a City Select.
That is baby jogger brand, actually.
Okay.
We're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's like, I had it for like 10 years. Like, I had the side-by-side, and it was like the best $400 I've ever spent. But
Well, ours has been a lot more than that because ours is probably 12 years old. I decided to wash it, so I took
probably
the
have the same
cover
one.
off, threw it in the wash. It didn't come out very well. Like, it came out in pieces. So we had to buy a new one. But the great thing is you just call the company and we had to pay for it, but we got a whole new cover and it fit right on there. It's great.
So
I love it.
nice. Well, we probably have the exact same one because I bought mine. My son will be 12 in September, and I bought it when he was born.
Yeah.
Right before he was born. So that's next month. This 12 years. So, yeah, that was like a lifesaver because I bought so many strollers before that. And then I bought the single baby jogger City Mini, and I was like, this is the best stroller in the world.
Yep. They push so great.
Yeah. And you literally can just like turn it.
Yep. Even carriers, like we had the cheap whatever Target carrier, and there's nothing like baby wearing. I mean, I kind of didn't want to be like that typical granola crunchy mom, but the significance of wearing your baby and attaching to them.
Especially when they've had trauma in their attachments before. Yeah.
Yes, I started really researching that, and I don't know how I would have gotten through without wearing my babies.
I remember when you got one of yours, I passed on my ring sling to you, Jack.
Oh my gosh.
Because I was like, this is like the best thing for me when I had my third, because like the witching hours when you're making dinner and you have to have the baby on you, because I think it's...
Yeah, I was just going to say, Baby Jack grew up in that thing, for real. And I used it all the time for all my babies. I still use it sometimes now, but I think I use it a little less because I had a slip.
It's really old at this point. It's almost 10 years old, but...
Well, trust me, it was not due to product failure, but Jack failure. I was trying to hold too many things at once. Maybe it wasn't wrapped tight enough around, and there was some slipping, and it was a last-minute grab before the baby hit the ground.
Oh, wow.
So it was all my fault, 100%, but it just made me nervous. So since then, I probably go with the Moby has more layers of fabric and holds them tighter to you. Yeah. So with infants, ever since the slip, I usually use the Moby. But I do put them in the ring sling sometimes because it's so much easier than everything else.
You know what? The reason that I wore the ring sling so much is because my oldest was in kindergarten. And it was a situation where you had to park and walk up to get him and then wait. And my second oldest was in like the 3-year-old class. I had like a really traumatic birth. And I mean, I was right back in action, like I think within like 10 days. And I didn't want any hands on her. I didn't want anybody touching her. Yeah. But I also couldn't carry a carrier yet. And so with the ring sling, she wasn't hot because it was spring, but I also could get her in there really easily, but I could cover her up, Yeah. But I also...
And nobody's going to reach like into your cleavage to grab a baby.
We could hope.
Where is it?
But I wore that till she was like 6 months old. Like she would be like sitting
basically on my cleavage. Like she'd be like her head was like right here, and she was like sitting up, looking around, So it was like perfect. But I was like in no shape to be carrying a carrier around like 10 days after a C-section either. So that was like probably the best thing I had after having her.
The thing I like better about the ring sling than the Moby is how easy it is to put them in.
Yeah.
Especially when they're little. Like, they just slide in.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they also slide in.
Yeah, right.
It's not as hot either. The Moby is hot.
The Moby can definitely be hot. It's a lot more fabric. Wraps around, like, all of you. But, so the ring sling, like if you have to jump out of the car and go grab something real quick, it's great to just slide them in there real quick. I think, like, if I'm going to hold a baby for a longer period of time these days, I just feel, or if I'm multitasking, right? So if I'm cooking or doing something like that, the other day I had a lot of cooking to do and a lot of house chores to do. And I had my infant in the Moby for almost the whole morning. And she just slept. With Baby Jack, it was almost always the ring sling. Like, he literally grew up in that thing.
Yeah, that
ours was the Tula. And I mean, we had two that were 10 months apart. Very needy. One is on the spectrum. And so I would wear one on my back and one on my front with a Tula and an Ergo. And so...
Oh my gosh, you're a rock star.
Well, it was exhausting.
I have a pretty needy one too, and I had a Tula knockoff. It wasn't exactly a Tula, but like the same concept. I got it on Etsy. Mm-hmm. I wore him in that for like a really long time. Like I remember once at Disney, he was like super overwhelmed. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I just like threw him on my back and that covered his head, and he was just like super happy.
Yeah.
Everybody else was having a great time. Our whole family was there, and he was just super content on my back. Everybody was like on Thunder Mountain. It was like late at night, and he was like, I'll just chill right here. It's like 18 months old.
Tell me something, if you two could. What is the difference between an Ergo and a Tula? Because those are very similar, right?
So I never had an Ergo. I just had the Tula knockoff, not even the real Tula.
I think it just kind of depends. There's other ones besides the two of those that are like the same similar type. It just depends on your body type and how it fits you.
So it just like clips on you differently?
Actually, I think I did have an Ergo. I think I had like a hand-me-down Ergo. I think the Tula has more, like covers more.
Yeah, it does. For me, it did.
So
and
I have
padding
two Ergos.
Better.
The padding's better in the Tula?
Well, it did for me. Like it didn't hurt I think the support on your lower back was even better for my Tula.
We have two Ergos, and I use them a lot with my bigger kids, with my toddlers, especially my one Baby Jack who elopes. Like if I have to go to the doctor's office, or like when we went hiking, we actually found, I guess we have three Ergos because all three, me, my husband, and my oldest son, each threw an Ergo on our back and put one of the toddlers in it for when we were hiking over in Tennessee. So I find them awesome for older kids. I think there's inserts you could put littler kids in. Is the Tula made for littler kids or older kids, or do you need an insert?
So there's two different sizes. There's a standard and then a toddler one. So there's also an insert that you put in the standard one. That can be for infants. But I prefer, like you said, a ring sling for toddler or for infants.
I love the ring sling.
It just kind of puts puts their face right by your face, but you have space to do stuff. I think it's like it's kind of like a natural hold, because that's how you would naturally hold them, is right there.
Yes.
So.
But I have to say, with a ring sling, I always felt like I had to have one hand.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because I took a hand off one time, and
something like that happened to me with the Moby.
Oh.
Like the back tie came undone. He didn't hit the floor, but
one of my bigger kids was kind of being needy at the moment, and they unclipped the clip, and my toddler almost fell out from the bottom. Oh, but again, I caught him and saved him. But accidents happen. For myself, having accidents with my kids, it has taught me to have a little more grace for bio parents, because some things really are just an accident.
My daughter has broken her leg 3 times, and on the 3rd time I was like,
yes.
Like I didn't do it, I promise,
We have a kid on the spectrum, and he broke his foot, and we didn't know. So for 2 weeks, he had a broken foot. He walked around with it, and I noticed that he was kind of limping. And I took him to the hospital, and they x-rayed it, and they said, well, this is a break, but it's not a fresh break. So I felt bad. I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to call CPI.
I have a child who experienced trauma. He is not good at deciphering when he's in pain or expressing or locating his pain. And sometimes like if you're there when he injures himself in some way, you can address it and he'll be like, whatever, it's not a big deal. But it always scares me to think that something could hurt him and he's not able to express it or recognize it, and that I'm not addressing it because I don't know about it.
Right.
Yeah, he's not a good self-reporter. My kids are very good self-reporters.
Some of mine are, but my little guy that walked around with a broken foot for 2 weeks, he's like that. He's gotten his hand slammed in the door before by a sibling and just kind of been like, what do I do? My hand.
Yeah, is that the one that's on the spectrum?
Yes.
So I have one that's like on the spectrum too. And when he was little, he was like that too. Like you could draw his blood and he'd just watch. He'd fall, have blood everywhere. He'd just, So, but my daughter broke her foot also. She jumped over a baby gate, broke her foot in 3 places. When it first happened, she cried a lot, but then she was fine. And I was like, well, just watch it. And she had this like extremely slight limp. And you could just barely see it when you watched her. I mean, you could just barely catch it. And I took her in, and sure enough, she had like 3 breaks in her foot.
Oh, wow.
She was just walking on it, just walking. Like, do you remember that when that happened?
Yeah.
And I was like, I feel crazy, but is this a limp? And I'd be like, no, it's not a limp. Oh yeah, wait, there it is again. And she had to get casted.
And one of our other kids that's on the spectrum, she could get like the slightest little bump. And she's losing her mind, screaming, crying.
Well, and he's done that before too. Like he had a bee sting here once, and the world ended.
Well, so I mean, for me, the world ends when I get stung by a bee. That's pretty traumatic. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. He's gone both ways. Like that was my first indicator for me that he could be on the spectrum, was that he didn't react.
Yeah.
But then he's done the opposite. He's like overreacted, with little things. But
let me ask you, Brendale, because you've taken quite a few kids who are a little older, right? What is the age range that you have taken to? What is the oldest child that you have taken as a placement?
So the oldest, I would say, is 17 that we have taken. The youngest has been straight from the hospital, 2 days old. So
in preparing for having one of these older kids, what tips would you have to a new foster mom? We've talked about like strollers and car seats and cribs, but what about, what things would be helpful to have on hand if you're expecting a teen to come into your home, or even a preteen?
Just for older placements in general, I typically have extra toothbrushes, extra toothpaste, deodorant, all the girls' hygiene needs. I have those at my house just all the time because I have so many kids. We did go shopping and try to prepare before we've gotten placements, but I feel like when you get an older child, it's almost like a bonding experience to take them to the store and allow them to pick out their own things. Maybe have, a couple pajama sets or new underwear or something at your house, but nothing extreme. And it really is really cool to see them get to pick out their own outfits and shoes and stuff in the store.
Yeah, that's really smart though, that having all that hygiene stuff, because it's, shelf stable. It's not like it's ever going to go bad. So if you were to set up your home like entirely from scratch again, you don't feel like you have to have everything, but what would be some of those staple items? Is there anything else that you haven't told us that you feel like, oh, definitely these few things you need to have if you're a new foster parent?
Maybe a couple of bottles, but nothing extreme in case you get an infant. Usually they come with some formula, or myself or my husband or one of my adult kids that still live at home would run out quickly and get formula. So like I said, for older kids, it's really cool for the girls to have a basket or something made up. Look, this is your basket. This has your personal stuff in it. We have an old locker system at our house, so each kid has their own locker. And we kind of just set up that space for them and say, here's your, maybe a journal, a pen, their own little notebook stuff, something really cool and personable, pajamas. I think it's always nice. I think of, if I were in their situation, what would I hope? Obviously, you want to have some snacks, and even taking them to the store and having them pick out what foods are their favorite foods. Sometimes that's really comforting for them.
I love the locker system idea. That's really cool. And setting up a basket for them with the stuff that they need.
If you were to do it all over again and start over with like case management and transporters and all that, like what boundaries would you set from the get-go?
So from the get-go, right when we get our placement, obviously it's usually with CPI. So there's not a lot of, information that I give CPI. But when we have case management come in for the first time, I usually give them our schedule because we have extracurricular activities. We live on a small farm and we have like different chores and things that we do. So I like to, obviously welcome them in and say, these are the things that we do on these days. This is our schedule. This is how we run our household, just to kind of give them an overview. So they're not like last minute trying to schedule, they have to be seen by this date or they go to the dentist at this date. And I say, this is the dentist we use. When's the last time? I kind of take the hard work off of the case manager's shoulders. I never want to have to take my kids to like a dental bus or a clinic where it's just like, they shuttle them in like cows. Mm-hmm. I want it to be a personable experience. I just let them know these are the doctors that we use. I need them on this insurance with this doctor and this dentist, this eye doctor. And I try to have a mutual respect with the case manager. I find that if they see that you're a real person, a real life, you have real life stuff going on, they're the same way. They have probably kids at home or they're newly graduated, usually, fresh out of college. That they have life. Life happens to them too. And if you're just mutually respectful, usually that works for me.
What would you do differently if you were to do it all over again?
I think in the beginning of our fostering days, we used transport a lot to transport our first foster kids to visits because I had that expectation that parents were mean and awful, and I expected the worst. And so I think I wouldn't have used transportation. I would have realized from the beginning that these kids deserve that. They deserve us to be their advocates and take them where they need to go. Try not to use transport if at all possible. I know some people work 40 hours a week and there's just no way possible. Let your kids know that you're in their corner, you're fighting for them. And even with the parents, build a relationship with the parents so that they know you have their back as well.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you feel like you did right from the beginning that you go back and you think this worked for us?
I think what we do right is let our kids know and let our parents know we don't always make the right choices. We're not always perfect. We make mistakes a lot. And if we do, we want to make that right. And so we communicate that with our kids really openly. If you have something that you need to talk with us about, we're an open door. Like, please bring it to us. But we do have an expectation. If you have a complaint or something that, is bothering you, you need to be a part of the solution as well. And however we can help you do that, then we're willing to do that. But I think letting our kids know that we're not perfect, we make mistakes, has been one of our biggest positive things.
Thanks so much for being with us today.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on social. We hope that you join us again next time and keep on fostering the future.